and welcome to episode 40 of Sinews of War. Last time we faced a pretty easy battle against the Mughal Empire when we totally surrounded their forces and destroyed them with some traditional hammer and anvil tactics. We then faced a larger battle against the Mughals, fighting over the victory problems in India that we've been going for the whole time. The enemy's performance was relatively abysmal, only 1 point in the line really being contested, but the enemy didn't bring weapons, so that made things easier. In the Americas, we advanced against New Spain yet further, with their forces at Panama surrendering to our advance, meaning they're very limited in terms of territory right now. And finally, against Russia, I needed to defeat this small army in my territory so that I could reinforce the main army ready for an attack. A world with food for all. A world where the streets are safe to walk with not a thought of arming oneself. A world where the brave, the hard-working and the honest prosper above the brutal, the sneaky, the thieving. The Golden Dutch Empire under your king, Willem IV, and his noble stadtholders, wishes nothing more than to make the dream of a paradise world a reality. With the help of the industrious citizens of the new order, the word criminal shall be forgotten, and the word peace will lose all meaning, for no other state of affairs shall be known of. The price is simple. When the Empire asks something of you, you provide. And in return, the provisions of others doing the same will profit you more than anything you could achieve working with the selfish, narrow-sightedness of ages past. This missive asks only a single task of you, the enlightened reader, a task that will begin the process of uplifting all on a rising tide of civilization. You must write to your governor, to your mayor, to your director general, to whomever it may concern, and inform them that you will no longer tolerate a regime that treats the myriad races of humanity as rungs on a ladder. You will not tolerate honest men to be held as slaves. You will not tolerate primitive peoples being denied the protection of the law. You will not tolerate the disease, the unrest and the despair born of ancient peoples' oppression by high-born men of questionable worth. And to those who rely on this ladder for their livelihood, I ask you not to despair also. You will have your slaves, you will have your labourers, but it shall be the fair rule of law that creates them, not the arbitrary template of man set over the mighty form of God's creations. So we're here in this little battle against the Russian forces just north of Riga. Nothing too exciting going to be going on. The most important move the enemy made was right at the start when they did their traditional throw the cav in tactic, and it actually worked surprisingly well because I wasn't really paying attention. You can see they got a massive charge on the front of my line, who only then formed the square after having been charged, so that was a little bit slow on the uptake, but it will still help. And the unit next door is going to come and get involved as well. The enemy's infantry not following up, so we are free to just use these line infantry for that. Two other units going to go and meet the very slowly advancing enemy infantry out there, and I decided to even send in Vermes to get involved in this fight, since we definitely want to minimise casualties to this unit being engaged by the cav, and the cav will do okay against my line infantry despite all the bayonet upgrades and the square. Enemy cav will be lost in the process though, but the AI of course doesn't really care about that. So in goes Vermes to clear this out. You can see we're already starting to win, the square having been formed and the reinforcements pushing the enemy back out of it. My own cav, who traditionally would have gone to stop the enemy's cav, were busy going to destroy the enemy's artillery. Wanted to gain a definitive artillery advantage in this fight, we'll see why in a second, and it proved very easy to get because the enemy didn't defend their artillery. They did have some infantry actually in the trees back there, but they weren't able to stop me from just coming in, killing everything and then leaving. Meanwhile, the enemy's advancing infantry just routed once they entered battle, so my cav can now chase down those big units and absolutely annihilate them, which pretty much guarantees victory. The enemy's superior numbers, one of the only advantages they did have, going to be thrown away. Now you can see from how everything is on fire that today I'm going to be experimenting with a carcass shot as the enemy advance up one more unit into the fray. Obviously that unit on its own not going to be able to do anything. But someone mentioned in a previous video that carcass shot, although apparently useless to me earlier, is useful if you target the ground in front of an enemy unit. So I'm experimenting with that now, and you can see it's starting to have an effect on this stationary unit of militia which is just sitting at the back of the map. I fire at it, and then some distance beyond where where the shots actually land, the enemies start to fall, almost as if those clouds coming off them are poisonous in some way and are just cutting the enemy down. So you can see another small bit of that effect here, where we can see we cut through the enemy's line. It looks like the shot that landed right in front of them did the damage, but I'm pretty sure it was actually the one landing further back. I think directly in front of where it lands, it doesn't actually do anything. And the fire, which I initially thought was the weapon, does not do anything at all. As we can see right here, the enemy just going to come and actually stand in that fire. It doesn't do anything. It is just a visual effect for fun. It doesn't even indicate where the weapon's ammunition is landing. So overall, not sure what that's about. Meanwhile, the enemy's infantry being defeated against my main line, but I'm not even paying attention to that whilst I'm playing. I'm just trying to have a look at this carcass shot. So here comes another volley coming in, and we can confirm here that the shots landing near the enemy don't do anything, because we can see how far away the fire is from where the enemy starts to drop when that shot hits. So it looks like there's a pretty big distance between the apparent target area and the real one. So you do really have to target quite far in front of the unit you're trying to target. And here's a great shot. The killing power goes right through the unit, cutting it in half, killing scores of enemies. The fact that the enemy are at a slight angle to the direction we're firing from, meaning we can get even more kills with such attacks. So that unit now down to basically half strength without even having done anything in the fight. Just standing there. It's not clear why the AI isn't even using it at this stage. They're just providing me with a chance to experiment, really. There was another unit sitting in a wall, and we can see we make a big number of their troops just disappear with another shot falling short but doing the damage with the mysterious deadly smoke or perhaps invisible shrapnel. Not 100% sure what's supposed to be happening. Quite nice there, because their uniforms actually match the flowers into which they fell, so they now blend in quite well with the beautiful meadow in which they have died. But overall, going to be hard to actually hit some of these units, because the carcass shot is so inaccurate that it'll take all day to eventually destroy them with such a tactic. So I do need to come in and actually fight them normally. Moved up from line infantry to fight the militia. My cavalry went behind that unit of enemy line infantry and it started chasing them. Annoying actually, because my howitzers are still attacking ground near where they were, so now I'm just wasting shots. The enemy's melee militia routed after being shot a few times, probably spurred on by the fact that half the unit was already dead, so that was fantastic. And the line infantry, I attacked them with cavalry, which forced them to make a square, and then once in a square, I just came and shot at them from all directions with my own line infantry. The enemy didn't even fire back, very kind of them, and away they go. So an easy victory has been won, and those men won't escape because they're running in the direction where my cavalry are waiting for them. So an interesting fight, not tactically, but good to know that carcass shot is actually really powerful in the right circumstances against stationary opponents if you can attack ground in the right place. And checking the kills, it seemed to be the cavalry doing the most work. I wanted to see how many kills the howitzer had got, but apparently it did nothing, so I guess its mysterious ghostly kills don't count towards its glory, which is unfortunate for their crew. But anyway, we know it's good. Not sure exactly what the good king has got going on in his head. Did his foreign friends put him up to this? Trying to sabotage the whole empire from the top down, I bet. Seems that I am to invite these Baltic peasants to dine with me every night, for they are so hard-working, and I am just a high-born man of questionable worth. Or should I be expecting to receive soon the list of people who the king does not in fact value less than a common labourer, and find my years of service rewarded with a mention? I suppose I can leave it to Lord Uvata to act upon. I am only his general after all. But I suspect he'll be even more astonished than I. The king he put on the throne is now trying to dispose of him like a full chamber pot. With that Russian army defeated, Vermes is now free to move around Riga. We do need to finish them off. They have some survivors, and I'm also concerned that I thought the Russians had hidden forces down to the south. I still can't see anything of them, but before I had seen them moving forces around. We're going to pretty much just ignore that though and continue on with the plan. So we destroy that force and move ourselves a little bit closer to St. Petersburg, where I was thinking of linking Vermes, who as we can see is becoming a pretty good general, up with Lord Uwata in order to help the main force push to the northeast. I'm actually going to rethink that, as we'll see in a minute. Now, Poland and Lithuania wanted to trade with me before. I've actually spurned them for trade just so that they don't get any money off me, just to keep them weak. But this time I thought maybe it was worth going for trade, even though we have to do this very unfavourable tech trade at the same time, just because I don't want them declaring war on me again. We want to completely ignore Poland and Lithuania now. They're quite weak, but a single army could still do a little bit of damage to all of my undefended territories in Eastern Europe, so nice to have them on side. So the Russians still stealing my tech and advancing towards Kiev yet again, so it seems they are thinking of making another attempt at besieging the place, as they keep trying to do. Jumping over to India in the next turn now, Costa, who has now arrived back on the scene from eastern India, is able to finally get himself up to this battlefront. We're going to take that last Mughal territory there. They do have one more territory up in the mountains that we're not concerned about, so we won't be destroying the entire faction, but it will just even out our territory and of course leave them completely crippled and unable to do anything against us. I'm also moving all my reserves up to the front line as well, very unlikely to need them elsewhere in India. On the Ottoman front, it's time to attack this army that has taken a farm there just beside Ankara. I'm going to move up with 2 stacks, one led by Cordland, the other a reserve army, to move up and engage them. And the enemy's army was already in terrible condition, missing loads of troops, so we just absolutely walked over them, retaking the farm, destroying the Ottomans, and also now clearing finally all of the Ottoman forces out of our territory. One more army appears to be on the way, so we're going to advance to meet that. But it seems the threat from the Ottoman Empire has now gone away, so that war is basically over. In Crimea, still having troubles with public order, so I can't get Guyden's army out of the place, recruiting militia now, so that hopefully in a turn or two we will actually be able to leave that place. Now up at Kiev, I'm watching the Russian army and just waiting for it to come besiege me again, which I'm pretty sure it's going to try. At the same time, I'm going to be attacking Belarus, where inside we've got a Russian force that actually is about equal in power to mine, despite mine looking better, both because the enemy have that 50% bonus to infantry unit size, and because this army is kind of scrappy. It's full of irregulars, and it's way too heavily composed of cavalry. So an interesting army that should still be able to win, at least I hope so. Now up here in the St. Petersburg situation, I decided I'm going to not bother with that move to go northeast and instead bring Vermeers down towards Lithuania to try and capture it. That's where I think the Russians might be hiding an army, and if they're not, the territory is very open to me just taking it, so I might as well go in and have it. I'm going to recruit some more forces up at St. Petersburg so that I can reinforce the main army there in case the Russians attack the area, but since they haven't so far, it seems like they don't have any interest in it. Now in Central America, going to continue pushing on against New Spain, getting slowly closer and closer to that settlement there. Their armies mostly too far away to have any impact on that battle. They could come back and try and take Panama, but they've actually been walking northwest, so I think they do want to defend their territory rather than make counterattacks, which is fantastic for me. I'm not going to bother chasing them, just going to focus my money in the area on upgrading some of the new territory that we have taken. Now back over on that Russian situation, I decided what I could do is actually make the situation in Kiev weaker so that I can tempt the Russians into making a siege assault rather than doing an actual siege. So I decided to move away my reinforcement army of Cav to see if this would have that effect, and they can go and in fact support this already basically all Cav assault on Belarus. So if I just have enough Cav, it won't matter that we barely have any infantry, we'll just somehow slash through that Russian army. That's basically the thought. So we'll make that attack next time, plus Vermeers can attack Lithuania simultaneously then. So the Russians do start a siege at Kiev, but they don't make the siege assault I was looking for, so it didn't quite work out. That is a shame. The Maratha come to me with some outrageous offers. They keep trying to do region trades that are absolutely off the table, so not going to happen. There's a Mughal army here trying to move through my territory very outrageously, moving really near to my main force, and I completely annihilate it. Now I'm not sure if that army was actually a rebel army or whether it was part of their main force, because you can see the public order has stabilized here in Hindustan, and previously we were almost certain to have a rebellion, so I don't know if repairing all the buildings here just had a really big effect and I underestimated how big it was going to be. But anyway, the situation is fine is the sum of it, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Now in Central America, time to besiege that settlement, having finally reached it. The force inside, nothing too special. Decided the best thing to do here would be auto-resolve saving just in case we get an insane result, but it is as expected. So there we go. Now what I thought would happen here was those two new Spanish armies would disappear, because I thought that was the last territory New Spain have. We've just destroyed the faction, haven't we? And now you can see me looking around, trying to think where they could have another region, but I realized it's this one up here. They have Santa Fe right on the edge of the map, and I don't know why I didn't see that before. And I was just thinking to myself, how was I so sure that I was about to wipe out the faction? And I realized maybe it's because that region isn't on the mini-map. So when I've been scanning the mini-map for yellow territories, basically looking for where New Spain is, you can't see Santa Fe, so I basically forgot about it. So that means this war isn't quite over, but still not going to be a challenge to take it. Just a big walk. A pamphlet and 1,000 letters. This is the proof we needed. The king certainly intends to take control of the company. Our allies in the States General seem to be powerless to stop him. Too many of the stadtholders have been seduced by the king's sudden relapse into a childish utopianism. They're ready to arm even the most frothing of primitives to win more power for a man who already seems to have heavy sway over the better part of the world. Now more than ever, gentlemen, the nation, and indeed the world, needs the company, needs a bastion of rationality and stability. The program shall have to be intensified. And as for the enemy propaganda, primitives who can't read will not be effective, and they've got plenty of work to be doing. Back in India, Costa is now making an ambitious move, rushing westward in order to capture this Mughal settlement, which will complete, in a geographic sense, our territorial conquest in India. And that was an easy enough win against a bunch of archers, so there we have it. Going to micromanage the replenishment of troops to get his army back up to strength a little faster. So that doesn't destroy the Mughal Empire. They still have a territory up there at the top right corner of the screen, but at this stage, we just don't really need to worry about them. Costa getting a traits general of infantry, which actually reduces the morale of his troops. Basically, he's working them too hard. It seems his ambition is rubbing off poorly onto his troops. But anyway, we've now captured a nice sizable portion of India, and it is time to stop and start focusing on building it up, since much of it is in disrepair or just generally a poor economic state. So we're going to try and get peace with the Mughal Empire. I don't really think they're going to be a threat, but it would be nice to get peace so that their fleets in various points around the world aren't a threat to me anymore. So I'm going to try and get that. I didn't manage to get any deal where I actually get anything off them. The only thing they would accept was white peace, unfortunately, but that's what I need anyway, so we're going to take it. They're still hostile towards me, so it's possible they'll come back, but with only one region and me controlling basically the whole theatre, I'm going to be getting stronger faster than they are, so really at this stage they're out of it. Now I wanted to move my fleet, which was blockading the Mughal fleet inside this port. For some reason it didn't have any movement points at first, but then if I actually move the fleet inside the port that it was blockading, then move it back out again, then it gets all its movement points back, so that's handy to discover. They're going to go back to the shipyards in southeastern India, where we can start constructing more boats to add to the fleet, since it is quite small. Now, Gaiden is finally making a move out of Crimea. With the use of these militia, we managed to get a just about stable public order situation. So we can now do something with this full stack. The question is what? I first considered going east to attack more Russian territory, but I thought it probably would be more wise to actually just clear up the defensive situation first. I'll bring him over to come and relieve this siege at Kiev. Then we'll have 2 stacks to do it, which will guarantee victory. And on the topic of sieges, we are now also ready to make our attack on Belarus as the cavalry reinforcements arrive, and Vermeer is going to head into Lithuania to try and capture the city very sneakily, which, while it's unguarded. There were only 4 units in it, 2 militia, but the balance power was somewhat even. I thought that was probably lying and just went for an auto resolve. The result okay, but moderate losses. And Vermeer's army is actually quite damaged now, and we don't have enough money either to repair the damage to the settlement or to start replenishing the forces in the army. So that's a little bit of a dodgy situation. They're going to have to hold on for a bit. Now we need to go in and try and take Belarus. This time a more serious battle. At the end we've got artillery, cavalry, and a decent amount of actual line infantry, but we've got this big scrappy army, loads of cavalry, and just a few units of infantry, fewer than the enemy, but cavalry reinforcements to replace any losses we take as well. So I started up by setting up a formation that wasn't really going to be of much use to me, because the enemy are not going to attack it, because they don't think they have artillery disadvantage right now. They're content to sit there and fire at me with their emplaced artillery. Meanwhile, their army is just doing its thing at the back of the map, just running around in big blobs. You can see the enemy have deployed anti-cavalry traps, and that's going to make this much harder to attack with my basically all-cav army. Gonna have to be super careful they don't accidentally run onto those, because they won't dodge them on their own. But anyway, their artillery at the front was so exposed by the fact that the enemy's army was just messing around at the back of the map that I just sent all my cav in to go and take that artillery. So that's got that problem out of the way. It didn't really do much damage to me anyway, because it had to shoot through buildings to hit my men. On the other side of the battlefield, tried to attack some infantry, but the enemy were very good about actually forming into a infantry square the moment I arrive, better than I am usually. So I'm going to call off that attack and go back. I'm basically forming a big cavalry death blob where I can get something between 6 and 10 regiments of cav and just smash units one by one. Over here though, the enemy's cav being used to attack mine. It's going to be a 3 versus 1 fight where we will take losses, but we're going to win on numbers there. Also, the enemy's general gets caught in melee by my cavalry and is very quickly killed, so that's handy. The enemy don't seem to really care, had no real noticeable effect on the enemy's morale. And I attacked another nearby unit of infantry, and once again very quickly forming a square to prevent me from getting in, and then also reinforcing with another unit coming in to attack in regular melee. Well, I say a square, not quite a square, as you can see, a piece of a square. But I was just impressed by the AI in this battle. They're actually doing quite good tactics to try and stop me from just attacking them with an all-cav army. So pretty inconvenient. It means I'm going to have to bring up some actual infantry to try and distract the enemy so they stop forming squares. Otherwise it's going to be a very unfavourable exchange of my cavalry for their infantry. So eventually my guys come up, and we're going to start a little line battle here on the western side of the map. A couple of my units are just militia, but it's the same thing for the enemy. It means the deadliness of the fight isn't going to be so high, but all I need is to have the enemy facing that direction so I can come up behind them, which is exactly what I'm doing now. This unit of militia getting rear attacked by some cav. They seem to notice it at the last second, but it's too late now. Militia worse in melee compared to regular line infantry, so it should be a little bit easier, and I don't think they can form a square if I recall correctly. My own militia are going to charge in to join that melee as well, just to further heighten the intensity of this blow. Not that adding militia into it does much, since their melee attack is so low. They're just going to be there as a distraction. Infantry square next door is just being swarmed by my cav. I decided to just hack through it and try and kill it by sheer attrition, and we are going to be able to do that. Captain thinks the king's brave. Crazy more like. He's lost it. Success gone to his head. You can't just step in and say, right, you're not a slave anymore, but you over there, you are. It's like, isn't there a reason why everything is like it is? If you give all these foreigners power, they'll just be laughing at you. They'll stop doing anything to try and earn it, since you just gave it out for free. Stupid. And the worst thing is that everyone knows it. But now it doesn't matter, since half the time you only get one damn choice on the vote. Plus the king's going to let all the foreigners vote. They'll just vote for whoever he asks. Pretty much over for actual citizens then, isn't it? Can't even go to Britain anymore, as they're doing the same damn thing over there. What are we meant to do? This battle is the first time I've used these troops brought up from the Balkans, and a regular skirmishing, I think it's Pandours they're called. And they're having a good time here, just shooting into the flanks of these units around these buildings, which otherwise aren't really reacting. They do have one unit in combat here, which is in a big square, very inefficient firing formation, shooting over at my line infantry, who are just over that little mound, so they can't really see them. But we're having a gun battle anyway, just to at least pretend that something is going on. Really, I just need some time to get my cavalry around behind the enemy and bring up more Pandours behind the enemy to shoot them in the rear. The problem here is that the enemy actually reacted well to this. They turned their infantry around and ordered them to melee charge my skirmishing line, which is absolutely the right thing to do, because in a ranged engagement they're going to be weak against this unit, but they are going to be super strong against it in melee. So they make this charge. The Pandours get a last second volley and cut down like 50 enemies at the last second, but not going to be enough. The enemy make their charge in, and just overwhelm our formation. Our guys, only light infantry unit armed with a little sword, going to have a severe reach disadvantage against the enemy and their bayonets. So now they're in trouble. I've got the unit next door, which I could throw into the melee as well, but really I needed to bring over some actual cavalry support to try and distract the enemy. But by the time they arrived, we'd already lost so many of our men that it wasn't really going to help, and my unit there actually routs out of that combat. The unit next door has got involved as well, but I think they routed pretty quickly too. So we lost a large number of those Pandors in their first engagement. They did do a decent amount of damage to the enemy at the same time, but a shame. The enemy reacted properly and actually dealt with that rear attack. The rest of their force though routs once we surrounded it and started shooting at it. So still a resounding victory, the enemy losing way more than we did, but I thought it would be even easier than that. Perhaps my expectations for the AI are so low that when they do anything, perhaps even by mistake, I get impressed by it. So no particular outstanding units kills wise. I expected to see the cavalry getting tons of kills, but it just didn't work out like I thought it would. But at least we've got the capture. We can't actually afford the repairs, so we're going to have bad public order and low tax. We'll have to just sit there for now and hope that nothing bad happens. Same thing in Lithuania. The Russians already appear to have forces en route. We've got two armies coming in from the east, including a full stack here coming in towards Belarus. So it looks like they may be considering a counter-attack, but if we can clear up the situation in Ukraine, we'll then have enough forces to deal with that quite easily. Now, in the end turn sequence, Spain have a deal for me. Not new Spain, but the old Spain, if you even remember those guys. They want to buy some technology off me. And while I was there, I asked if they wanted to be my military ally as well, and they actually accepted that. Now, there's no point to that whatsoever, other than that it's nice to have an extra nation on board. They own Sardinia right now, so that's what Spain actually is. They're no threat, but we've got them on board. But now, remember earlier when I said about trying to not get Poland to attack me? Well, that didn't work apparently. I agreed to their deals, but they still want to go to war with me. I was looking at the Allies situation. I realised I don't really need to bother calling in allies since they're already at war with half of the world, and most of those are my allies. So we've now got a new war on our hands. Not very useful, not exactly what I was looking for. What I need to do at this point in the campaign is actually get as much peace as I can, save up loads of money, and then buy the victory regions. That's how close we are to winning. I just need enough money to win the game. Or if Portugal and the 13 colonies aren't willing to sell those regions, we're going to have a very big war indeed to get them back. Now Sweden declares war on me for some reason, just adding to the pile this turn. So these new conflicts suddenly arising here in Eastern Europe are not appreciated at all. I thought we were winding down here, but at the very least, since we are now at peace across the rest of the world, like the Ottomans, the Americas, and in India, we probably should be able to reinforce the situation. We learn here that Uwata has taken up drinking, which is very inconvenient. Get -2 morale to all of our troops. Perhaps he's just very stressed about how the politics of the realm are going. Now here in the Americas, all we have to do left militarily is attack that tiny new Spanish colony out in the wilderness. So I'm putting together a force with lots of native troops to go and sort that out. They should be ready to make that attack next turn, so we'll see their adventure next time. Across the empire, tensions between neighbouring powers and with the local populations began to ease. With that came chances for investment, particularly for the West India Company. The Americas were filled with resources, colonial opportunities, and potential converts for the Protestant faith. Despite the East India Company getting all the support and attention from Europe, they had an uphill struggle against a large, established population that was culturally distant from all the Dutch stood for. Most of the population of the Americas, however, would soon be European in descent. In this way, the balance of internal power in the empire turned into a contest between the Western and Eastern hemispheres. Thanks for watching. We'll be putting the gold into the Golden Dutch Empire next time on Sinews of War.